All right, welcome back. We are MDEV1004, that's Mobile APIs and Frameworks, and the summer 2024 semester at Georgia, and it's week 10, part 3 of our broadcast and recording. We're probably going to have 4 parts of this one, but let's see how it goes. All right, so in the last part, what we did was, if I go back to our stuff that we did with here in our Mac Studio, the remote Mac Studio, that's been serving us very well. What we did was we were able to log in and register, and everything was good. One thing to note is if I take any time off from this, then this spins down, and so far we're pretty good. This hasn't spun down. We need to change some stuff now, and we need to do a couple things first. One, we need to enable our JWT. All right, so that's something we need to do. So that happens in Visual Studio Code, and so what that means is in our in here we want to go to our routes, and in our routes right now we have login and register, no problem, but movie routes, we had these things turned off. We need to enable this again. So this is the part, and I'm just taking the in-class exercise 7 API, which we modified. I'm not going to keep making new ones, right? So just modifying that one, right, that we had before, the API that we had running, and I'm just going to go here, and because that was the last API that we did. We haven't made any changes to the API, so otherwise I'd make a new one. Right, but in-class exercise 7 was the last time really we made major changes. We did make a change to the sanitize function, but that's it. And I didn't want to make an extra API for that. So, all right, so this is the thing we want to do. So I'm going to save this. There we go. And so this now means our API is going to be, our JWT is going to be enabled, which is going to prevent any kind of CRUD operations. So what we have to do now is skip out of here. So because now, if you notice, if I go back to here, we're connected, we've redone everything, and I'm just going to close Visual Studio Code down. I'm going to go back to this, and remember what I got to do is I got to take everything from our API, all of this stuff, copy it, and then go to swim up to our API, get rid of this stuff. I know it seems pretty wasteful, but we need to do that. So, and then paste it in. And the reason why we have to do this is because we've made some changes and we want to guarantee everything's okay. Now that we've done here, then what I want to do is kind of come up to here, and I'm just going to go into here. I'm going to CD space, and I'm going to drag and drop my API in there. And I'm going to say git add dot, git commit -m, and I'll say re-enabled JWT, right? And then git push, and this will trigger render to redeploy, which is what's happening now. So that has to be redeployed. This is part of the thing that we need to do for Android and iOS anyway. So this is the time we're going to do it. And again, this is what you have to do for assignment 4. Assignment 4, you need to have JWT enabled. And let's see when this is going to happen, right? So you can see it's rebuilding everything and all that kind of stuff. This is what's happening, which is pretty cool. Right, build successful, that's good. Now hopefully it's going to launch everything. Build successful just means we're able to rebuild everything by pressing yarn. That's kind of like a yarn install. That's what the thing that he just did, the render batch file did for us, right? And now when it's deploying, it's actually deploying everything, so it's going to run live. And there's another process, that's another batch that's running, that's making this thing go live here in the back end. All right. And when it decides to, we're going to be pretty good to go. And it's going to take us some time. So in the meantime, while this is doing this, I'm going to start patching up our parts here that we need. And the parts that we need are different because what we want to do now is we want to be able to change our movie view controller and stuff like that to give us an extra way to log out. So we need kind of a log out button we have everything except for that. So let's add in a log out button. So while we're waiting, so main storyboard, I'm going to go to the movie view controller, which is this one, our favorite movies, right? And right now we have add movie, but we need another button. So I'm going to go here and we're just going to add in a button. We'll add that in and we'll kind of put this on this side, right? And this will be log out. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be functional, right? So I'm going to make it red and all that stuff. So let's bring this up, and we're just going to kind of give us some more workspace. So just going to kind of over here, and so instead of button, we can even call it log out if you really want to. I want to change the background color, right, of this thing. So again, I'm going to go back down to the button, the background, and the default tint is blue, right? If I change it maybe to red, system red, right, then it'll look like this, right? Again, you can use a symbol here. You can use anything you want. I'm not using anything. I'm just put the log out button right there. It should kind of align with this one, at least, at the very least. And now we need our assistant editor to kind of add that in. So again, I'm just going to pull up our assistant, and way at the bottom here, below our cancel button pressed, right? And again, this has to be in this is our register view controller. Let's make sure I got the right one without my stuff being killed. Ooh, hey, I got kicked out. Let's try that again. Oh, that would be bad. Imagine that. I lost my connection somehow. That can happen. That can happen. And it might happen, right? Because it's maybe I'm down, right? You never know. Let's see. Am I down? I might be down. So I may have to finish that part later. But what I was going to do here was add a button, and then it looks like I'm down at home, right? Let's see if my internet's down. That's terrible. That never happens. All right. May just need rebooting. Let's see if that's true, and that's okay because we can continue with what we're at right now. Yeah, it looks like we're down. We are down. All right, so that happens. That happens sometimes. So I'm on a Mac right now. I'll come back to that. I'll do that later on. But let's see, first of all, did everything fix up in my render? Let's go back to render. So render.com, that's what happens. You have a Mac remote, but I'm down completely. I'm like down hard at home, right? So that's weird. Okay, so it's still deploying anyway. Let's take a look at that deploy and see what's going on. So it's still deploying anyway. Even if I wanted to do it, I'm not ready to go, right? So it's just kind of weird. I wonder if for the internet to go down at my house, that is like a major failure, either power failure or something else, because I have like redundancies everywhere, right? Which means like power went out somehow, which is terrible, right? It's absolutely terrible. So we'll figure that out, but that's not on you, that's on me. Or it could be just an internet bump, right, where the internet's just kind of down. That's also a possibility. But I'm sure my little guy will be calling me saying, hey, Dad, I can't play games anymore because the internet's down, right? If that was the case. I'm not sure if that's true. Let's see how long I stay down, right? So we were good for a bit. We can check to see if I'm completely down or not, or if I'm just downstairs where my thing is. Still deploying, eh? Look at this. Render is notorious for this kind of stuff, right? Where it's going to deploy and it's going to take its time deploying with what it's going to do. Yeah, it looks like we're down hard. Like as in like 4 minutes ago we were good, and now suddenly we're not, right? So I can tell because I'm trying to ping my router, and it's not looking good, guys. This is terrible. All right, well, this is still in progress anyway. Even if I refresh, you're going to see that this is still doing its dance. So let's do the Android part while we're waiting, instead of wasting time. And hopefully my system will come back and everything will recover. At some point it will. Let's take a look here. Oh, this is good. Okay, so this is deploying. And yeah. All right. Okay, server is live. This is a good thing. So this is the node start. I'm waiting to see if everything is live. Service is live, and then we can do that thing where we can say, sorry, let's go back to render. Let's click on this little button here, and we want to say /API/movie/list. So that's going to give us this. This is going to be available to us no matter what, because remember what we're doing here is we're just getting, this is always available to us. All right, now I'm just gonna see if I'm still down or if it's swung back up. I'm surprised my little guy isn't like raging right now, but you never know. Well, he'll do what he's gonna do, right? Maybe he's just down hard, like no power or anything like that up there. It's possible. All right, so let us continue. So what I want to do now is, we know that even if I don't have access, I can get most of it on GitHub, right? Because I'm posting everything on GitHub anyway, right? We're up pretty good, and this is where we have it. So last time we were here, ICE 8 Android. So I want to grab this project. So let's do that. So I'm going to go into desktop. Yep, my little guy's calling, and I'm sure that he's down hard. Let's see. Hello? Power out? Hello? Yes, power out? Hello?
What?
Is your power out?
My power is not out.
But your internet's down.
Yeah, the internet's down.
Okay. Well, it's going to come back up whenever Bell decides to put it back up. I'm online right now teaching, so you're going to have to wait for it, man. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I thought resetting the router would do something.
No, it's not going to reset anything. Right? You can go down and try and reset my router. You know where that is, right? But
I tried to reset it, like turning the power on and off.
but it's red, right?
It's still red. Right?
Yeah, it's just Bell is down in that area, right? So, okay.
How long is Bell gonna be down?
Don't know. Okay, I gotta go.
How do you know I had something to do with the internet?
I know. Okay, I gotta go. Bye. All right. So, all right, let's continue. So this is, so like I said, I want to, I've got ICEs here, but I don't have all of them, and that's okay, because what I can do is, just like we did before, so my guy's down. See, I told you. I can tell when this stuff happens because, my friends, because of how things are working. Okay, so CD space, and I want to grab this one. So let's go and grab this one right here. And then I will, sorry, I want to git pull. And that'll pull everything. That is the stuff I just did, right? And we'll get back to the iOS stuff later on. I'll make another recording for you guys, not a problem. But now what we have is, in ICEs, we have ICE 8 Android, right? And ICE 8 Android, we need to convert to ICE 9 Android. So I'm going to grab this, copy, and paste, right? And it's going to make a nice copy of this. There we go, ICE 9 Android. There we go. Because we're going to add some stuff to Android to make it work as well. Okay, so that's this part. And then we're going to launch Android here. Android Studio. Let's launch that. Hopefully this is going to work. Or else I'm going to have to stop recording and then come back and record again. Okay, there it is. And what we want to do is, I'm just going to close this project down, and I'm going to, yeah, let's close it down and terminate. Close it down and terminate. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up that other one. So I'm going to open up our new project, which is going to be in Georgian. This one, and we just made ICE9 Android. I'm gonna open that up. Like normal, what we need to do is we need to, after Gradle has done its dance, right? So that's something that Gradle's gonna do now. We can watch Gradle do its thing, right? Starting Gradle daemon. Okay, we're good. And so now, after we've done that part, we're going to go to Gradle scripts and rename stuff. So we're going to go here. This is something that is also not easy to do. I'm just going to name this to ICE9 Android, because that's what this is, ICE9 Android. And I'm going to save that. And I'm going to sync now. I don't need any additional things here, I don't believe. I think we're pretty good with all of our plugins with Retrofit and Moshi. I think we're pretty good from last time. So we just need this to update. Next part is we need to change our project settings because our project settings are wrong. So I'm going to go into app source main Java and then change this, refactor rename. We're going to refactor rename this to ICE9 Android. That has to change. And refactor. Again, I'm refactoring the projects so that it's just named properly, because otherwise it won't be named properly at all. There's ICE9 Android. That has to happen. And then the other one that has to change is, did I change everything? I don't think I changed everything. Let's go back to my app. Sorry, one more thing. I need to change the settings Gradle where this one says ICE9 Android. And then we have to resync that again. There we go there. Resync. That's good. So ICE9, that changes this to say ICE9. And then in the app side, again, this is just renaming. I'm going to go res values and themes and go into the theme and change this to refactor rename to ICE9 Android, ICE9 refactor. And this will be also refactor rename to ICE9 Android. There we go. So this is refactored, that's refactored, we're all good to go. And then now what we need to do is in the strings, we might have ICE9 Android, write this. And then we should try to deploy to our emulator, because even though we've made these changes, we don't know if it's going to run, right? So we have to, when we make changes, first thing we do is test. That's what we do, okay? All right, so now it's running here, and I'm just going to push it over. So we should see that application running. And this is the first part. The first part is always making sure that Android is running properly, and then we're good to go. And again, I'll take this as far as I can, guys, and then we'll stop just before 2, and then I'll make another little short video later on when everything comes back up online. is what it is, as they say. All right, so here's what we had last time. I turned on JWT, so if I click this, right, as an example, we can see it, but I can't update or edit right now because, you know, we're not logged in, right? All right, so let's do the next part. So this is running. This is clearly wrong. Someone played around. You can see that people made all kinds of things. These are you guys messing around and not me messing around. And again, guys, this is not for you to do. You're not supposed to do this stuff. You're supposed to have your own version that you're setting up for yourself, not using mine, right? Using mine is okay for reference, not to to use the same thing. Otherwise, you're not doing any work. All right, so please don't do that. Next part. So now that we have this, we want to add in, we'll put this up on GitHub. So we're going to say something like git add dot. Let's just move up one step, actually. Git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added project files for ICE9 Android. Git push. Okay, so that's that. There we go. That's being pushed out. And then now that we've done that, we've added everything in, we don't need to see this right now, but we do need to add the two new things that we had before. So here, I've given you a couple of login and register string. We need to put those in. So again, what I want is the login activity, and in order for us to make the login activity, the smart thing to do is do it first here. So again, I'm going to go into Kotlin, and I'm going to go into here and right click here, and I'm going to say new. I'm going to go new activity, and I'm going to make a new empty views activity, and we're going to call this the login activity. Caps lock. Login activity. Okay, so then it'll be activity login. So I'll finish that one. And then it'll add in a basic stub, and I'll also do the same thing right away for our new activity, which we'll call the empty views activity, which is the register activity. So register activity. Okay, finish that. So there we go. So I add that in. So those two things have been added in. Now we need to do a couple things. We're using view binding, right? So let us, in the login activity, let's modify the login activity so it uses view binding. And the way this works is we do a private var late init, or sorry, private late init var, where we call this binding. And we're going to say that it is of type activity login binding, this one. Okay. And then what we need to do is get rid of enable edge to edge. We don't need that part, and we don't need this part. That gets added in the latest version. And what we need to do instead is say something like binding is equal to, activity login binding dot inflate layout inflator. And then here we're going to do a binding.root. Okay, so that sets up view binding for our activity. I'm going to save that. We also can remove the extraneous imports we don't need. So we don't need these pieces because they're gone. Let's do the same thing to the register activity. So again, same idea. We're going to move this down here and that one down there. And we're going to go into a private late init var, which is called binding, and that's going to equal to the activity register binding, this one. And yeah, activity register binding. Why is it giving me an issue? Oh, it's of type, not equals. It's of type this, and then What we want to do again, if you take away edge to edge, and we get rid of this, and we're going to say that again, same thing, binding is equal to activity main, activity register binding dot inflate, and then we'll say layout inflator, and then here we're just going to put binding dot root. So this sets up view binding, binding dot root. Okay, that's view binding set up. I also want to make the login activity the entry point for the application. So that happens in manifest. So under manifest, you can see that I've added in the other activities here, and we have our main activity. What we're going to do, and the quick way to do this, is swap out the main activity with the register activity, sorry, the login activity. So I'm going to copy this part right here, and put this over here. And I'm going to cut this part out, and we'll put this in here, paste it in there. And now login activity is actually the starting activity. That is using the intent filter to say that the login activity is the one that's going to start first. This is like our entry point in the iOS side. Okay, so save that. And now we have our code that I've given you. So I'm going to go back out to here, and I'm going to grab all of this code for the login activity. And then I'm going to go to, once I have this, I'm going to go to here and paste it in to the res layout. And then it gave me an activity login here. And what I need to do is I'm going to turn this off, just design. And I'm going to go here and just replace this with this. So that's going to be all that stuff. Color blue I don't have. That's the only thing that's missing from this. So if I go to values, colors, and I add in a blue color, let's add that in, we'll call this blue. And then we'll say, bum, 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 bum. So RGB, that's the blue color that we want, that's blue. And save. And then that will make it so that login will have a color blue. So that doesn't error out now. And I think everything else is good. Email address ID. What's going on here? Login. Oh, yeah, this is no good. This should be, sorry. This should be the username edit text. So that's an error. I'll have to fix that up. So all I've done is I've replaced this, was just pointing to the wrong thing. So now this is username text. So what this is a constraint, and so on. And so this is going to point to the top of this one. Okay, so that's what that is. Constraint top to bottom of, that points to the other constraint. So now if I look at it, it's going to look like this. Yeah, that's what you should see, your login. Okay, and then let's do the same thing with register. Let's add those in. So back to register again, I don't need to see this. Let's put design. And then back to this, I have in the PowerPoint the register here, which is this. And then what we can do is grab this. Let's just go raw, having trouble. Copy all that and switch back to Android and just paste that in. There we go. And this should be good. You see all this is in. And if I go back to see it, it looks like this. So basically this is the user registration screen, and that is the login screen. So let's try this out and see if it works. We should get the login screen. It doesn't do anything right now, but we get the login screen, and that's the first step. So back to this, and if I rerun this thing, then we should get the login screen that comes up, not this screen. And there we are. Login screen doesn't do anything right now. We need to enable all that functionality, but first we're going to put this up on GitHub. So we're going to go here and we're going to say git add dot git commit -m, and we'll say added login and register activity layouts, which is what we did. Okay, that's those two pieces. Now the work begins. So we're going to do the same thing with we did with on the iOS side, where we are basically kind of connecting to the stuff that we did before, and it's done in a very similar way to to kind of the things that we did, with the stuff we already have. So we've kind of shown you the API response and all that kind of stuff. And now what we want to do is we want to think about how this is going to work for everything else. And just one sec while I pull up my notes, and then we'll be good to go. All right, so let's take a look here, and yes. All right, so let's take a look at the login now. So first we'll start with login. So the login activity, here it is, doesn't do much right now, right? And we have to kind of add some stuff in here. One thing is we want to save our token in shared preferences. So that's something similar to what we did with default preferences on the iOS side. So first we're going to say something like private late init var shared preferences is equal to shared preferences. We're going to make that reference, right? And then what we're also going to do is, after we've done that in the onCreate function, we have the binding, and we've set the content view to binding root, but then we have to initialize the shared preferences. So initialize shared preferences. We're gonna store the token in there, right? So we're gonna say shared preferences, and we're gonna say that that's equal to get shared preferences. Nope, not that. Get shared preferences, I said. And then we're going to pass in something like my shared preferences. You can call this whatever you want, right? So, so shared preferences is equal to that. And we need to talk about the context mode, which is going to be private. So context mode, how about I do this properly? Context.mode private, this one. All right, so that is setting up shared preferences. Shared preferences, we don't know what that is. It should be a capital S. That's why that's the problem. And that is, it should say get shared preferences. How about that? There we go. And that is exactly how it should look. Perfect. So that is this part. Then we want to make a binding for our register button. So we can go to there. So we'll say get. So we'll say binding dot register button, and we're going to set an on-click listener. And the on-click listener is going to be where we go to. We're going to navigate to the register activity with that button. We're going to say a new intent, which is equal to. We're going to instantiate an object of type intent. Like we've done before, where we're going to go from this to the register activity class.java. Okay, so that is how we do it. And then we're going to start activity with the intent, whatever the intent that we just made. And because we don't know what intent is, we need to import this class, the intent class, for this object. So right there, once I've done this piece, then I should be able to run. Let's rerun it. And if I click on the register button, we should take us to the other thing, which is the user registration, right? That's pretty good. All right, so let's hide that. So that's so far so good. So far so good. All right, so that is this. The next part is, once we've got that part in, we want to be able to have our login button, and we're going to create a function to log in the user. So we're going to make a private function down here, just a stub for now. So private function called login user, where we're going to take in a username, and which is of string type, and a password, which is also of string type. Okay, And right now, all we're going to do is nothing. We're just going to have this there, right? But what we're going to do is in our binding dot login button, the login button binding, we're going to set an on-click listener. We're going to use this type. And then the login, we're going to say username. Well, that is equal to binding dot username edit text dot toString. Right? That's what that is. And then we're going to also do the password, where that's equal to binding dot password edit text dot toString. So that's going to basically get the username and password from the form. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, log in the user now and pass in the username and password. And instead of doing it like right here. So that's what this is going to do. So this is going to pass it to this area right here. So what are we going to do with this piece? Well, we need a couple things here. The data manager needs to be updated before we do anything more. So back to the data manager. Remember, the data manager is our central point where we connect to the base URL, which is API movie, right? That's the base URL. This is a problem, right? Right now we use that as the way we connect. We can't use this base URL anymore because, well, it's incorrect, right? So, so back to a bit of the drawing board, right? And let's get to it. So really, the base URL here, right? Like, notice that the base URL is being used here, base URL for retrofit. And we're adding in movie here for everything that we're doing for when we connect to retrofit Emoji, right? We need to modify this a little bit, okay? Because basically what we need to do is a couple things, right? We have all of this stuff, and our service, our our movie API service does a lot of the heavy lifting for us. Now, we don't need to necessarily use everything that we have here, but one thing we don't have that we haven't included here is our interceptor for logging in. Okay, so we're going to add that in now, and we haven't done that. We haven't needed to do that before. So Moshi by Lazy, which is the builder, and then we're having the Kotlin JSON factory adapter. All this is good. When we get to this, instead of using movie, which is something we can't use anymore, we're going to just use API. All right, so movie is going to be added in later on. Okay, so we'll get to that. So base URL is we're going to build, that's going to be our call for the base URL API. And then we need to do something else. Before we get to this piece, we're going to go to here and we're going to do an interceptor. Okay, so we're going to say private val OK HTTP, and it is client, which is a part of retrofit, and which is of type OK HTTP client by Lazy. And what this is going to do for us is we're going to say OK HTTP client dot builder, and we're going to build out this new thing, which is read timeout, and the read timeout is going to be time unit in seconds. So after 30 seconds, we're saying we should time out. Okay, and then the next part is the connect timeout. Where we're going to say that is also 30 seconds. So that's time unit in seconds. We're going to do that too. And then we're going to add interceptor, and add interceptor, we're going to use a closure for this, and that is going to be, call this chain, where val original, we'll call this original request is equal to chain dot request, and we'll say val builder is equal to original request dot new builder. Again, I'll talk about what this is. And then I want to say shared preferences. That's what I want. We don't have shared preferences, and so we need to make a reference to shared preferences just underneath the base URL. So we're going to say something like private val shared preferences shared preferences is equal to context dot get shared preferences. And you're going to say, wait, what context? Because there is no context. We're going to make it so that it passes a context to this preferences, because we need to, and we're going to say my shared preferences. And then we're going to also say that that is context dot mode private, this one. Okay, so let me explain why we need the context, because our URL doesn't really understand, data manager doesn't really understand anything. So in the private constructor now, we're going to take in something new, which is a private val context, which is of type context. Okay, that's what this is. And context, if you go up here, what we do is we need to get a reference to the context object itself, right? So context is something that we're going to have to add. That's the context that we're getting into the data manager, right? That's in the private constructor, right? So that's what got added in here. Now let's go back to this. So it says context. It says import property context. So let me just make sure that that is correct. I don't think I need to do that. Context. Sorry, just want to make sure context dot get shared preferences. Context. Sorry, so make sure I've done things correctamundo. And private val context of type context. Yes, that's correct. And then, in the constructor function itself, which is the bottom, that's retrofit data manager here. Val instance data manager. I need to pass in the context in here too. So instance right here, this is going to be context. And I'm going to pass in context, and it can't be by lazy anymore the way this is written. I'm going to have to do it slightly different. So in the companion object, which is in here, right? The companion object has a function called instance that I'm going to use instead. I'm going to kind of change up the data manager just a little bit. Actually, let's just rewrite this part. So it'll be a new function called instance, which is going to take context. And what we're going to say is that the context is, we're going to return a type of data manager. And what we need also is a private static instance object, which we don't have. So I'm going to put it up here. So that's going to be a private var instance, which is of type data manager, right? And we're going to assign that to null by default. Okay, so that's what that's going to be. And this needs a bit of some annotation to let us know that it's volatile. So I'm going to say at volatile. And that what this does, it basically says that, hey, this is a bad thing. I'm also going to suppress lint, and just so we don't have that error all the time come up, static field leak, which is not going to really happen, but that can happen. Suppress lint with 2 S's, and that should silence that error. Okay, so so back to this. So now that I have an instance object, I can do the classic thing where I can say if instance is equal to null, then what we want to do with this one is we're going to say that instance is equal to a new object of type data manager, where we pass in the context dot application context, and that's what that's going to be. Otherwise, we're going to return instance back out again. Oops, back out again. Back out again. I'll be okay. There we go. So that will take care of the context problem that we had earlier. This is going to create almost like a retro version of the data manager singleton. And that should be something that is now working. Let me just make sure that this is correct now. So if I say something like, okay, context, so that is private val shared preferences. And I want to say that shared preferences is equal to context, right? Context dot get shared preferences. Why is that not computing right now? My shared preferences context mode private, context dot mode private. Why? That should work. Import property contexts. I don't think I need to do that. Content context is up here, right? And context is here. Sorry, just continuing to check, making sure that I don't have everything badly formed. Service is good. Service is good. So all this is good. MPI, movie API service, get all movies, and then, yes, suppress lint. Is that outside? Oh, duh, this can't be here. This can't be here, and neither can this. These two things need to be outside of the companion object. These got to be up here. That's better. And so this is val instead of a const. There we go. Base URL now is up here. Okay. I think that's correct. Moshi also should be outside of the companion object. I don't think we need to put this inside the companion object either. So this part can be up here. Yeah. And so can all of this piece, which I'm just to save time, I'm just going to copy paste that and put it in. So it looks like this. That's this piece. And retrofit is also going to change a little bit. And I'm just going to grab retrofit and the OK receptor here, interceptor. Just grab all this part, and I'm just going to take that and put it outside of the companion object, like so. Okay, so that is going to fix our problems. So that is looking pretty good now. Okay, so that is the base URL. I'm just going to go through this again. So shared preferences. The reason why I couldn't feed this is because it was inside the companion object. Companion object is a static object, and so we can't. That's why we couldn't see this. And then OK HTTP client is basically an interceptor. That's what this is. And the interceptor, what it does is it takes the request and it actually takes the auth token and it creates the header, the authorization header for the auth token. That's what it does, and stores it into shared preferences. That's what it's going to do. Retrofit also uses the client, which is an OK HTTP client, which is what it needed to do. So that's what this all does. And the last pieces of this puzzle is what we're going to do with the login and register. And I'm just going to add those two things in here at the bottom. So just to save time, it looks like this. So service, register user, and login user doesn't exist. Let's go back and add those to the login and register for our API response. So API service, so the response is okay, right? Because the API response looks like this right now. And what we need to add to the API response is the token object, which we are missing. So the token object goes here. That's what the token object does. And we need a little comma at the end. There's the comma. So there's the token object. Because remember, we have those four pieces: success, message, data, and token. Okay? And so this is something that the API response object changes to. Again, these are all cascading changes. And then the other one that has to change is the service, the API movie service, this part. So this is new, because now what we've done is we've changed the movie. So it's going to be movie/list, right? Movie/find, because we changed the base URL, right? And this movie/add, and movie/update, and movie/delete. These are all things we've changed. So we have to add movie in there, otherwise it won't work. Okay? But what we need to do now with the movie API service is also add in register and login, which looks kind of like this. Right? So we got to register a user, and we want to put the user in there. And notice that we didn't need a user on the iOS side. Well, we do need a user object on the Android side, right? The way this is written. So let's add a new user object. I'm going to say new calling class. It's going to be a user, which is going to be a data class. So that's what that's going to be. And the user object is exactly what you would expect from the user, right? So nothing that's too crazy, right? And if we look at what that might look like, it's going to look like this. I'm just going to copy paste that so you can see it. It looks like this. And let's talk about that really quickly. So again, we have to use Moshi for the username, email address, display name, first name, last name, and password. Notice these are correct now, right? All lowercase, and this is good. Username, email address, display name, first name, last name, and password creates the user object that we want. Okay, and then back to, once we have this, we can go back to the movie API service, and these errors are gone. So now we have a register user and a login user, and we can use those in the data manager. Here's data manager. Data manager now computes. It's pretty good. It has everything it needs, and I think we had a lot here. So let's put this up on GitHub. So we're going to say git add dot git commit -m. We'll say updated services for secure, that's spam, for security. Okay, get push. So we get all those things have been added into to what we have there. Okay, so those are all the dependencies that we just added. The user, updated the data manager. We changed it a lot. We changed the API response, so we added the token as part of the message. We changed the API service, movie API service. We did that. One thing that we haven't changed is the movie view model. Right, the movie view model is also something that we need to change, because we've modified the data manager instance to include a context. Right, so that's something that also must change now in this particular thing. So what we're going to pass in is data manager instance, and we're going to pass in a reference to the application, right, that we want. And the application is something we need to take into the view model. So view model right now is got nothing, right? So it's like of type class movie view model. We're just going to kind of refer or make a reference to view model, right? But what we need to do is we need to change this to Android view model, and we need a constructor. So let's change this. So we're going to say Android view model. That's new. And where we take in the application object itself, and then in the constructor function, right, in the constructor function, the application object is something that we're going to kind of take in. All right. Android view model, we need to import that class. And then application, we also have to import that class in the movie view model. All right, so that's what that does. So now with those piece parts, the movie view model will be able to connect properly to the data manager. Okay. And I know this looks like a lot of changes, but it is. It needs to be put in there because things are different now, right? We're trying to authenticate, and we're trying to do this just like we did before, but with a secure kind of structure. So the movie view model is now good. There's no other changes. We don't have any errors anymore. Let's put this up on GitHub. So git commit -m, and we'll say updated movie view model. Movie view model. Okay, so that's that part. Now, after we've done this part, well, we got issues because the movie view model changed. So too has to change we're retroactively changing everything. Anytime we have the reference to the view model now, we have to pass in stuff to it properly, right? So example would be the view model. There's a view model, get all movies, right? And if you look up here with the view model up here, view model by movie, right? This is in the main activity. I'm just going back one by one to make sure that everything is correct, because I don't want issues anymore, right? So, yeah. So when we make our view model, right? So go back to just to go here. Our movie view model observe, right? As an example, and we're binding this to movies and the movie list in the first adapter. This is all good to go. And then we swipe to delete, right? Which is what we're doing. We're doing that that stuff that we're doing. We're moving from one action to the other. We're doing all the functionality on the other side, right? Here on swiped, we can delete. Are you sure you want to delete or not? All this kind of stuff happens, and then we use the item touch helper to get all that stuff done. So all of this, for the most part, up to here, remains the same. Yes, that's nothing that changes over here. Okay. So all that stuff is good. The other part that I want to check is the details controller, the details activity, and to make sure that this is okay, right? So again, when we're updating and all that stuff, right? Anytime we're doing that, when we're going to be doing the deleting or anything else like that, we're going to have to issue a kind of the token to make sure that all that stuff happens, right? So view model delete movie, right? When we do this stuff, so let's say if I go here and I say, okay, I want to delete the movie now. Let's go back to movie view, the main activity for a second. And we're going to pause this in a second. I'll come back and finish this off. So let's go back to here for a second. So add button takes us to the details activity, but we can swipe to delete to kind of delete the movie, and we do that here where we say view model delete movie ID by movie ID, right? So the view model itself has some cooking to do if you think about it. Let's go back to the view model for a second and talk about this. So let's think about this for a second. So the view model, right? So when we do a deletion or when we do an add, what we want to do is we want to be able to, we're going to be calling because the view model wraps, the stuff from the data manager. So it looks like data manager, this is where this is going to be called, the delete movie, right? So I'm showing you the cascade here. So if I go back to data manager, right, then somewhere, right, in these calls is where this is going to happen. So I say something like, for example, hey service, get all movies. Hey service, add a movie, update a movie, delete a movie. And the service itself, going back to the movie API service, has all this stuff, right, where we say, hey, let's call this service, and that's how it's going to be. So the question is, if you look at this whole thing with this, Just a second. So these calls that are happening, register user and all this kind of stuff, is calling the API response user, right? So that's what this does. So the movie API service does some of the heavy lifting. And the question you should ask is, well, where do we end up with the token? So if you go to the data manager again, in the data manager, in the OK HTTP client, this is where we are getting the string for the auth token and adding this to the header when we're building out this request. And that's what's happening. We're sending this request. For every request we do, we send the token, and that's why we don't see it anywhere else. So details activity and main activity really at the end of the day have nothing to do, and everything is good to go on this side. Okay, back to login activity, where we didn't quite finish the login activity. And we had to do all that work so that the login activity was ready to go. And we did that because, well, it was a cascade of stuff, right, that we had to finish. So to finish this part off, where we want to log in the user, the login user method is not that complex, but to save time, I'm going to copy paste it in here, right? So I can show it to you. I'll talk to it, but I'm not going to type it. All right, so here we go. So what we want to do is we want to say that the data manager instance, we want to log in the user, and we're going to call the callback itself, right, is missing the class. We'll add in the callback class. Let's just make sure that the proper imports are there. And that is the callback class, which is retrofit callback. And a lot of times, what I find is when I'm importing stuff like this, and I'm using retrofit a lot, sometimes it's just easier for me just to say something like import, and then I'll say something like retrofit2, and then .star. And then this will import everything we need for the callback functions and everything else to work. Okay, so now show login failed snack bar, and that's just another function we don't have, and that's like a toast that'll come up. So I'll put that near the bottom. There we go. And then snack bar is another class we can put in here, and so is frame layout and gravity and context compat, and that should be good for everything. We don't have any errors. So let me talk about this now. So this is the login user. So make a user. We instantiate an object of type user. We say the username is the username, password is the password, and data manager instance context this. We log in the user. We pass in the context for the data manager to this. We log in the user, and then we use the callback API response of type user that we're going to pass into that's the object. We override the response. So on response, what we want to do, if the response is successful, then, and the response body with the success itself, remember this is where we're getting this response body success is true, similar to what we did with iOS, then we can print line user logged in successfully. We get the token itself is the response body token, and then what we do is we use the shared preferences and we edit it and we put string the auth token and we save it there. That's how we save the token into the shared preferences. Then we start the activity, main activity, from the login activity. So we go from this to the main activity, and then we finish this thing. This is the login activity. And then else the user not logged in or the login failed. The same kind of responses we did before. I think we don't have any other errors at this point. Let's just for the login activity, let's see if we can log in and navigate us from the login screen to the movie view. All right, so let's try this out. So that was a lot of changes, and I'm sorry about that, but that's how it goes. And then we're going to take a break after this, and I'm going to come back and finish. So we're here. Let's try admin, and then we'll try 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we'll log in. Now this is a problem because I'm trying to log into our service, this thing here, and that is this, and unfortunately it is spun down. And what we're going to do is we are going to do this offline, and so I'm going to take a short break, and when we come back I will record the rest of these things, get us back online. Hopefully my house will be up there by then, and we'll continue recording. So